Welcome to the Becoming Ageless podcast, where we engage in extended conversations to promote a youthful biological age and improved health span. I'm your host, Robynn Fredericks, holistic and integrative health practitioner.
Discover the transformative power of breathwork, as discussed in a detailed conversation featuring insights from Debbie Gutierrez's personal health journey. She's a certified nutritional therapist and a functional and therapeutic breathwork practitioner who, in December of 2021, discovered that she was born with a congenital heart defect. She had an embolic stroke and underwent open heart surgery. And this is where that she found the power of breath after going through the healing process helped to heal her body. Today, her focus emphasizes everything from the importance of proper breathing for physical and mental health to discussing practical tips and techniques. Deb's goal is to educate others on the role of breathwork in improving overall health, reducing stress, aiding weight loss, enhancing digestion, and promoting mindfulness. Now, on to the show.
And we are here today with Debbie Gutierrez. Debbie, thank you for coming on our show.
I really appreciate you inviting me. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. And I think our audience is really going to look forward to everything you have to say too, because we have so much in common, and I have a lot of followers and listeners that are here because they know that I experienced a TBI, a traumatic brain injury. And what a lot of people don't know, our followers do, but a lot of people don't know that you experienced some similar medical issues, but even beyond that. And I was wondering if we could kind of start off this episode. You guys, we're going to be talking about breath control or breathing for health and things like that, but we want to talk about what happened to you, if you don't mind.
No, that's great. Okay. So back in 21, I regularly exercise. I work out hard. I lift weights, all of those things. But my fatigue has been getting stronger and stronger. Some of it actually started earlier, and I was like, "Oh, what is going on?" But then it in October, late October, it started to get worse,
Mm-hmm.
worse, and then November, and I started to get in a lot of pain. My back was, and it's not like normal pain, that it was just abnormal. It was insane degrees of pain that I couldn't really explain. And then it was obvious that I was getting weaker and weaker. It became to a point where I couldn't even walk up the stairs. My husband kind of had to get me upstairs. So one Saturday night, my girlfriend was over, my husband, and they were really worried. And I finally said, obviously, I need to go to the doctor. Like, something is not okay.
Yeah.
So I go to the doctor on Monday. They do a bunch of blood work. And it was two more days where she's like, "You have some infection. I don't know what it is, but you need to go to the emergency room." I said, "Can I go tomorrow morning?" She says, "No, you need to go now." I'm like, "Okay." So I went to the emergency room. Long story short, they did a bunch of blood work. They sent me home and said, "We're going to call you tomorrow. We're running more. You have some infection. We don't know what it is." Call me back. I go into the emergency room again the next day. They do more blood work because they found 4 different types of bacteria growing very rapidly. And we end up finding out that I had endocarditis, which is a blood infection in the heart, and which came from the fact that I had a heart murmur, and I also had an unknown congenital heart defect. I had no idea I had what's called a bicuspid aortic valve. This is something you're born with. You're supposed to have a tricuspid aortic valve. So I get admitted to the hospital, and I find that I have this congenital heart defect. But the first day I'm in the hospital, and then I find out I have to have open heart surgery it's happening so fast. And I had really just given myself up to everybody else. Like, I finally stopped fighting it. And so I have this congenital heart defect. I find out I'm going to have heart surgery. I have IV antibiotics. They want the infection to go away first. So I went, spent the 4 nights at the hospital, went home. And then on December 27th, I had what's called an embolic stroke. So all the blood in my heart was under so much stress. The aortic valve was just basically really trash. All the blood went up into my brain and hit primarily the area of the hippocampus.
Oh,
Um, So I lost memory pretty quickly. Not like all my memory, but just weird things. Like I didn't remember what to call people. I didn't know their name. I didn't know places. I didn't really know where I was for a little bit. There was just a lot of confusion. So we find out I didn't know I was having a stroke. We find out I had a stroke. I get into the hospital again. And then they decided they had to move up the surgery because of the stroke. They did not want me to have another stroke. And it's a unique stroke. It's because it was the damage to the heart and it decided for some reason it couldn't be all in there and exploded in my brain. So from there, I had to recover from the stroke, which wasn't too bad. I still have some memory loss. I still struggle to find words. I still struggle to complete sentences. I tend to get a little over anxious when something doesn't quite go right.
Right.
And I'll kind of get mad at myself. And that's just what's happened because of the damage to the brain. So if I made that too long, I apologize, but I try to make it as short as possible. That's it in a nutshell.
Oh my goodness. That's scary. So you had the open heart surgery,
Mhm.
and how long did that knock you down for?
Well, oddly enough, I was only in the ICU for 2 days. They said I could be there for 4 to 5, and I was actually in the hospital for another 2 nights after that. So I was in the hospital for 4 nights post open heart surgery. Um, Recovery was still long. It's long. It's long. And a year, I'm 2 years. January 12th was my 2 years of surgery.
Mhm.
Um, After the first year, like last January, about this time, I woke up one morning and it was like, oh my gosh, I was still healing way this whole time. So I think, when you think you're fine, you kind of plug away. But with everything that happened to me, it took a long time to heal, right? For
Mhm.
sure. I do know that strength training was a big piece of it. The heart surgeon kind of would joke and say, "Hey, bumped into him. He's actually lives down the street from me. It's kind of bizarre, but I bumped into him and he goes, "Are you lifting yet?" And it was about 4 months after surgery. I said, "Yeah, I'm lifting." But I couldn't lift for a while. They break your sternum, but kind of hurts.
Yeah.
so so yeah. But I really have a lot of belief that um lifting weights had a lot to do with my strength.
Uh-huh.
And I'm not a very big person. So, there were a little bit of complications because I'm so small. But lifting really, I think, had a lot to do with why I survived.
Yeah.
So
That is amazing. Well, lifting and probably nutrition, your whole
yeah,
lifestyle regimen. I mean,
everything. Yeah.
you and I are both big time into nutrition. And I mean, I used to love watching all of your posts come out on nutrition. So you've got to get your social media out there and let it
I
go. You're
I've
getting it.
taken a little bit of a break there, but that's okay.
Yes. So did I. Hey, I was out for a year. So happy birthday to you, my friend. Your second
Thank
year
you.
anniversary. I
Yes.
told you my first year anniversary is, February, early February. So I feel like we should get, extra birthday presents because we were like literally born again.
Yeah.
And
Cheers. Yeah.
girlfriend,
Good
yeah,
point.
you look fabulous. And I'm so happy that you are here with us and that this did not be you. And I
Yeah.
think that
Me too.
says something. So now, okay, big question that everybody's probably dying to hear. How old are you chronologically?
I am 62.
62. And
Mm.
biologically, if you had to kind of guess your age, how old do you think you are?
You know, I look at that. I think, I probably 45-ish. I know, does that sound crazy? But
No.
I just feel like sometimes I'll look at people and I don't, this is not a judgment. And I think, oh my gosh, they're only 45? Why did I think they were 55? Why did I think they were 55? And
You're
so
right.
I'm like, I don't know. But I really, I want that 45-year-old vibrancy. I mean, I think
Uh-huh.
I don't have some of that vibrancy for sure that a 45-year-old is, but I'm just like, yeah, I want that, so I feel that way.
Yeah. You and I need to go play on a playground somewhere.
We do.
We
So
totally do.
isn't play an important aspect of
So
overall well-being, So
absolutely. I have several years ago I was reading a book on galumping and really talking a lot about how just the art of play really teaches your brain so many things. It's kind of like, you take a wrong turn instead of like, oh my God, I need to U-turn. Where do I turn around? It's more of like, let's just see where this goes. And, not having any idea what you're doing or what stones might be in front of you, but you're learning how to jump and move and maneuver. And the art of play
Hmm.
actually keeps the brain young. And I mean, that just fascinates me so much. And I always look at little kids and how they're acting and everything else. It's like, that is so much me. That curiosity, that playfulness, we need to keep that going as we get older in life, I think.
Yeah.
Personally think. So today we are talking about the art of breathing. And there is so much to this. And while I've looked at this immensely, throughout my years, really, I'm big time into breath work. I'm into meditation and things. Debbie has gone a step further and she has made this a major study. And I'm sure
Mm.
she's going to be taking it even further. But I have to ask the question that probably many of our listeners are asking right now. And that is, I have been breathing every day of my life. What makes you think I'm doing it wrong? So maybe we can start with that. What do you mean by the art, of breathing? What is this all about?
Well, it's interesting that you asked it. Like we were taught to read, we're taught to write, but no one taught us to breathe. That sounds ridiculous, right? Like, what do you mean no one taught? You didn't need to breathe. But the breath is something that we both have control over and don't. It's something that
Uh-huh.
happens automatically and something that we can adjust.
Right.
Um, and so when in my practice, my nutrition practice, we can call it, there's always been this sort of missing piece. There's people who I find are always in a sense of overwhelm. There's anxiousness. There's this for women in particular. You ever feel it like they just were grinding it out and just are worn down. We're exhausted
We're we're
every day.
expected to do 10 things at one time.
Right, right. So it's keeping women, whom I mostly work with, but not only, in this state of sickness and disease. So back to your question about the breath is we're not necessarily doing it wrong. So let's clarify a little bit about what breath work is in a
Yeah.
sense, right? There's this misunderstanding that we're now all of a sudden going to jump into this somatic breathing experience or this hyperventilation experience, Wim Hof. But not necessarily is not the best thing for all individuals, especially when I was talking about these women, right? And women who are just worn out.
Right.
Um, so for breathing the right way, most of us, I could argue that, as you kind of asked, was that we're just not breathing well. Most of us aren't breathing well.
Right.
Therein lies the feelings that I was just talking about, stress and exhaustion. So if our breath is short, maybe quick, it's only up here in our chest, it's more of a stressful state. We're more in that sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight, right? But if we're breathing slower, softer, lower into the diaphragm, breathing through the nostril, right? We're going to be more in the parasympathetic state. We're going to be more on the calming side of our nervous system.
Mhm.
So, to answer your question, it's not that we're breathing all wrong, right? But we just haven't been taught to breathe.
Well.
I know,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I know that, breathing can either help our bodies to heal disease or it can harm us, especially if we're breathing wrong. I know, like in fight and flight, it's just natural to, be getting those deep breaths and it's a little bit faster and you're a little bit worried. And maybe that bear is chasing you or you've got to just catch a bus or you just had an argument with somebody. But that's not going to help us to bring it back down. It's not gonna help us to sleep. It's not gonna help us to find the solution to deal with the problem. It's just meant to get us out of there. That's what it's meant for. So, I know like long ago, way, way, way long ago, BC days when experts have looked at the skulls of people, they see that back then the breathing pathways, the air pathways were larger, the mouths were larger they didn't have the problems
Mhm.
that we have today. We have learned through our adaptation process, the evolutionary process, that, the breathing has gotten smaller. It's gotten more nasally or more mouthy, like you said.
Yeah.
It's in the
Mhm.
upper part of the body. I know when I got into modeling, don't laugh at me, Debbie. I got into modeling when I was like 10 years old
Mhm.
and went through all these little modeling classes, and they teach you, put your hands on your belly. Your belly does not move as you breathe. It's only for your chest. And it's like, man,
Right.
nobody should see it. But then you talk to singers, that's all about, belly breathing. And so there's so much confusion out there as to what we should be doing.
Mhm.
But because of all of this, we now have major breathing issues as a society. I think I read, let's see, 40% of US people have chronic nasal obstruction, and over half of us are habitual mouth breathers. And it's affecting mainly women and children. And I think that is really telling of what's going on with our society. That breath is really important and something that medical science, allopathic medicine typically doesn't even look at. They never say, how many breaths per minute are you getting? Or what is your
Mhm.
level of oxygen to carbon dioxide? They don't look at the quality of the breath.
That's such a good point. I mean, it's not, once again, it's not really necessarily something they have time for or is in their wheelhouse, right?
Hmm.
And sorry, I'm interrupted probably. But you don't know if you were coming to a question or
No,
just interrupted you.
interrupts away.
Yeah. So where was I going to go with that? We do, like, speaking of statistics, 75% of people who suffer from generalized anxiety disorder have dysfunctional breathing. 50% of those who suffer from asthma have dysfunctional breathing, and another 50% of those who suffer from sleep apnea have dysfunctional breathing.
Oh, yeah.
So we're not aware, kind of going back to of how we breathe throughout the day. We're not aware of how we might be holding your breath or walking around with our mouth open. I know that when I first started this, that was one of the things was really becoming aware of my breath, of what I was doing. I mean, I'll give you kind of a fun example. For those of you, it's football time. It's football playoffs, NFL playoffs, and we were watching the 49er game, and I caught myself literally like, right? I'm like, what am I doing? I'm not breathing. My mouth is open. I'm tense as could be.
Uh-huh.
Well, no wonder someone might then, an hour from that point in time, have an anxiety attack.
Right.
And the reason I say that is a lot of people will say, I've all of a sudden had an anxiety attack. It came out of nowhere or a panic attack. We know that physiology is what affected that moment.
Hmm.
So, for example, we may not have realized we were watching a football game and we were getting really excited for our team or really nervous. I mean, giving a kind of a crazy example, but I was possibly holding my breath. Maybe I was hyperventilating with my mouth open, closed. Maybe something was disturbing me an hour before. For somebody who might have maybe they were stressed about taking a test if they're a student and they were probably just having dysfunctional breathing patterns.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, they think they had a panic attack and an anxiety attack. But it did most likely not come from some brain, like mental issue. It just came from this physiology of not breathing properly.
Right.
So, those are some things to think about when we talk about why do we need to learn to breathe.
Right. Right. I remember, and this happened not too long ago. And you guys, this is coming from somebody who has studied a little bit of breathing, who knows how to breathe. I have an aura ring, and the aura ring counts for me what my breathing rate is.
That's what.
But even with that being known, I watched a movie that was a thriller comedy where, there was still some things going on. And I watched it right before bed, which was probably a disaster in the waiting.
Mhm.
But, I went to bed. I mean, I had a smile on my face and it all had, a beautiful happy ending because it was a comedy after all. But I went to bed thinking, she should have done this. She should have done that. What if that had happened? And I found myself laying there and my breathing was like faster. And I would try to do like, rhythmic breathing. And it's like go right back into, the whole thing again and reliving it just over and over and over again. And, sometimes you just have to look at what we're watching, like a football game or a thriller, maybe a conversation, and say,
Mhm.
okay, wait a minute.
Yep.
Something is not good here. And I need to take a step back.
Yeah. And you touched on it, with sleeping too. I mean, you know, when we watched a television show, right? That's like you were given an example of. I mean, that night you went to bed with an elevated heart rate.
Hmm.
You It takes a while for the heart rate to come down with an elevated respiratory rate, and usually it stays there. It just doesn't just come down
Right.
automatically until your breathing really slows down. So there is this relationship between the breath and the nervous system, 100%, right? We breathe all the time, and how we breathe affects how we think and how we feel and how we act. So what I ended up discovering when I was working with people is this missing piece, which is why I ended up taking this functional and therapeutic breathwork course. And that's the thing about breathwork. It's not, I think if I said this already, it's not one specific thing. It's something we can do in a minute.
Hmm.
It's something we can do in 3 minutes, or it's something we can do on our own a half hour or an hour. And depending upon, you just learn these different practices on what's best for you, the person. So there's this relationship between the breath and the nervous system. One's posture will dictate maybe how they breathe. Or is someone in physical pain or chronic pain? That is going to affect your daily nervous system, which is going to affect your breathing. And your breathing is going to be shortened, which is going to therefore impact your stress levels slash nervous system even more. So we've got our posture, our pain, we've got patterns of breathing, we've got, busy thoughts. We sitting in a chair all day. We kind of have to look at our the daily life of someone and like what is their posture? What are their habits? Do they wake up? Do they get in a car? Do they go buy a cup of coffee? Do they go to their job? Do they sit in front of a computer? Do they sit most of the day? Are they speaking all day long? Do they have more pain kind of daily coming up? Do they exercise or not exercise? Are they going back home and starting this sitting down habit and television all over again? Well, we wonder why we have different teeth, as you mentioned, from our previous ancestors when we're living in this, very tightened up life in a sense, right?
Yeah.
And it always comes back to the breath. I'm so in love with the breath. It's something that just can be the thing to change. So let's
Yeah.
say I'm working with someone who, really has a lot of weight to lose, and they may have some serious health conditions or autoimmune disease. But I'm finding if we take a step back and begin with the breath, and then some people are like, that is just way woo woo, but it really isn't. Because if you're shortened in the inhales and you're shortened in the exhales, and you can then, and you're have bad posture and you're in physical pain, if you can open up those breathing pathways, open up the oxygen capacity to go in and out of the body, build up that carbon dioxide tolerance, which you and I can talk about if you want. Um, those are the things that are going to sustain you for better health.
Yes.
Um, so I kind of went on a little rant there, but that's the kind of stuff that I like find the breath so fascinating
Absolutely.
and
I do
healing.
too. And, speaking of breathing, you guys listening, if you guys hear snoring in the background, somebody else is breathing in this room. It's my dog, and she's 13 years old and she snores. So if you hear her, I apologize.
It's
um,
so funny.
I know, right? So let's talk a little bit about carbon dioxide versus the oxygen. You mentioned that, and so you could delve into it. It's something that I think a lot of people are missing. They don't really understand what is going on with their breathing, oxygen versus carbon dioxide. They just know I breathe in oxygen, I release carbon dioxide. That's all they know. Can you touch on that a bit?
Yeah, yeah. I think right before I go there, I think I may have mentioned, we kind of one of the things that we really want to do to help with our carbon dioxide tolerance is um, we need to breathe through our nose, right? The nose is so much more powerful and it's there for a reason, right? Um, and so we need to be having our mouths closed. So the nose filters air. It's
Mhm.
our body's actual first immune response to help block pathogens and pollution, etc. The nose will condition the air temperature coming in
Mhm.
to our lungs. It'll help activate the diaphragm to move properly. This diaphragm is this huge muscle, right? It'll help activate the calming nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system.
Mhm.
And then we have a crazy molecule called nitric oxide. And that causes our blood vessels to react. So when we breathe through our nose, nitric oxide is produced and it helps to lower our blood pressure and our heart rate. So it is this antibacterial, antiviral thing, nitric oxide, and it's important for our overall health, not just our respiratory system. So that's why we kind of emphasize breathing through the nose.
Right.
Um, so breathing through the mouth just bypasses all that, right?
Right.
And mouth breathing, you'll know if you wake up in the morning, your mouth is dry, you've been sleeping all night with your mouth open, right? Or snoring.
Yeah.
We skip that first line of defense against like oral bacteria, right? If we have our mouth open, we're going to have more te- teeth and jaw issues, which is our ancestors didn't have, right?
Right.
Um, so breathing through our mouth just has a lot of things that will cause this chronic state of stress on our physiology.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the starting point there. So breathing not only helps us bring the oxygen to the lungs, but it also plays a critical role in getting from our lungs into mitochondria, which you have spoken about before, which
Mhm.
relies on carbon dioxide.
Right.
So carbon dioxide, I think a lot of times we see it as this bad thing and as this simple product to just waste away. But carbon dioxide is really a stress messenger, right? It helps us. We need if we tolerating carbon dioxide, we're able to deal with this psychological and emotional stress. We're able to deal with the stress from metabolic dysfunction, etc. So how that kind of works is with lower carbon dioxide tolerance, it can lead to changes in breathing, the rate, and the volume. So what people think of that can be really uncomfortable is to increase your carbon dioxide is basically a breath hold after you exhale, right? Which can feel a little uncomfortable and it can be a little anxiety inducing, right? When we inhale, our heart rate goes up, and when we exhale, our heart rate decreases.
Right.
The exhale is the more parasympathetic side of our breath. And then when we pause at the bottom, this is actually going to help actually increase, same thing, more of this calming system. However, we get a little anxious because we want to breathe. And in our mind, it's like, I have to breathe right now. But if we can just take the time to kind of just know that we're in control of that pause, and it's 10 seconds maybe, just for example, we're building up that carbon dioxide tolerance, which will improve our ability to handle all types of stress in life more. And it does then improve our oxygenation in the body, and more oxygen is more energy. So I
Mhm.
hope that kind of explains it.
It
Okay.
does, and I
Yeah.
I really like that, and there's, really fast, a lot of people, on this show as well, we talk about gut health, we have microbiologists on, but one of the things that doesn't get discussed enough, that breathing through the diaphragm, it is a big muscle down there, and when you're exhaling and it's sinking, you're actually massaging the stomach every time, and I mean, it's just one of nature's ways of trying to keep things going, keep the lymphatic system going, and, on the other side, looking at carbon dioxide, I think that this is just so fascinating to me. If you have that panic attack and you're doing that really fast breathing, a doctor might have you be, breathing into a bag and you're inhaling, exhaling into that bag. But when you're inhaling in this bag, you're actually getting in some of that air that you just
Mhm.
expelled and you're getting that carbon dioxide back in your system. And part of what the thinking is is it's a natural tranquilizer, sort
Mhm.
of. That doesn't mean, guys start doing that on a regular basis,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but, it just helps to naturally start calming you down, which is why bag breathing works in those situations. Um,
Mm.
the whole thing is fascinating to me. I mean,
Yeah, and
truly,
it's
truly
same too.
fascinating.
Right, when you pause your breath, you're doing the same kind of thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I always try to breathe or talk to people about like the box breathing. And so many people have it wrong. They think inhale, hold, exhale. Inhale, hold, exhale. It's like that's only three sides of the box. There's another side
Well,
there. And they
yeah.
forget that holding on the exhale, which is so imperative. And I love listening to you talking about why we need to be doing that. That's a huge component. Um, Doing all of these things, I know that breathing helps to really increase our longevity. It gets us into a parasympathetic, or it could get us into a sympathetic nervous system. Um, I heard a long time ago too, like if you wake up in the middle of the night, if one side of your nose is clogged, and I don't know if you know this one or not. This one was very cool to me. I learned it from a breathwork psychologist,
Oh,
and
wow.
she said that she has learned if you're breathing fine through the left side and the right side is clogged, you're in totally sympathetic mode. If your right side is breathing fine, but your left side is clogged, you've gotten into that sympathetic place and you need to be working on vagal tone and you need to be working on breathing to try to bring yourself down. And if you could look at your heart rate at that moment, you'd probably
Hmm.
find it was elevated. Your temperature might even be elevated. And I've like made a point to stop and look at that if I wake up in the middle of the night to see which one it is. And it seems to be really right on. I don't know that that's fact, you guys. That is what I was told through this other person. Have you found any like little tricks like that that people can stop and look at to find out where they're at before we get into this even deeper?
Well, you know what I thought I have not heard that
Uh-huh.
specifically, but, um, people with a deviated septum,
Uh-huh.
right? Well, it's usually on one nostril more than the other,
Yeah.
okay? And what they need to do in what I'm finding they need to do I didn't learn a lot about deviated septums until just a little teeny bit recently, um, was and all of us do, if we were to inhale and maybe you can see my nose. I tried to expand it. So when you inhale, just regularly, maybe you don't expand it. But for those who have that one sided or who have a deviated septum, part of the process of learning to breathe better, because those with a deviated septum have a very, very difficult time to breathe through their nostril.
Right.
So what we work with that is expansion of the nostrils when you're taking that inhale and even on the exhale. So trying to keep the nostril more open. So my point is, I wonder if it's similar to what she was speaking of,
Yeah.
because if we have this one side that might be more sympathetic, don't, and the other one, and you know what, all the yogi things, they'll do that.
Uh-huh.
Well,
Uh-huh.
there are breathing exercises where you hold one nostril or the other. And that point of, I believe it is to kind of go through the different cycles of your nervous system. So interesting.
That is really cool to know. It's the whole body just fascinates the stew out of me, you guys.
Yeah.
We part of my studies and the podcast and everything, you guys, is about, the pathways of aging. And while we touch on some of those pathways, we have to look at the body as a whole. And that is a big thing to me. And I really think that breath work should be one of those pathways. But every single thing, opening up our sirtuins, all of this, really, the telomeres, everything is dependent upon the cell and what's
Mm.
happening in the cell, within the cell, what's going on, and breathing impacts the cell. The cell cannot live for more than a few minutes without air. I mean, we have to have it. So it's telling us that, like you said, this is not woo stuff. We have to have oxygen or else we will die. There is no if, ands, or buts about that. Um, what kind of respiratory rates, if somebody has some kind of fitness device or something where they can track their respiratory rates at night during rest. What should that be? Do you have like any
Well, we can,
ideas or
you kind of don't even need the tool for it. I mean,
okay.
a lot of what I'll do with people is we'll literally for 1 minute have we'll count someone's breath, right? So ideally, um, the respiratory rate, would be great if it was under 15, 12 per minute or less. This
Mhm.
the sweet spot, so to speak, is 6 breaths per minute is shown to increase the multitude of goodness in our body. Like you say, the cellular biology. It helps our heart rate. It helps our gut. It is beneficial for our brain activities. Um, So that's really cool, and that would be something that's not going to be normal. We're not normally only going to breathe 6
Right.
breaths per minute, but ideally, throughout the day, if we were breathing 12 breaths per minute, that would be great. And I will tell you, my breath is not there. So, it's something we will work on, and one of the things you can do to do that is to increase your carbon dioxide
Right.
tolerance.
What is the average respiratory rate?
So unfortunately, they say 15, but what's happening is people are breathing 20 times a minute,
Yeah.
and that is hyperventilation. Um, when you're breathing 20 times a minute, it's putting a lot of stress on your body.
Mhm.
And so once again, going back to that ability to slow it down is key. So for those people who have like sleep apnea, this very dysfunctional breathing, right?
Mhm.
And they may actually be breathing less than that because they're literally choking themselves to death.
Right. They
So they
suffocate.
have a so when you ask someone like that to say do some longer breath hold practices, they're going to be in a really big state of anxiety.
Yeah.
So um ideally, at night, having 12 would be great. But most people are breathing 20 to 25,000 times a day in that incorrect breathing pattern. And that's kind of where pain arises and poor breathing mechanics. You were talking a little bit earlier, it's not getting, obviously, then, the molecules we need to get to the mitochondria. That's just a deep cellular function. So I hope that kind of puts us in the direction you were looking.
Yeah, yeah, totally it does. I mean, we are so dependent on this thing called breath. And I do have to laugh because, we don't realize even that we're breathing most of the time. We're unaware of it, but we can control it. And I love how when I first started getting into meditation, I don't know if you noticed this or not, you're listening to these breathwork people talking and walking you through that meditation. And the first thing they say is, okay, don't focus on the breath. What do? You
Focusing so hard.
cannot stop focusing on the
Yeah,
breath,
yeah.
so I can just see everybody's probably like looking into the mirror right now. Are my nostrils expanding right now? Trying to
Well,
figure out what's going on.
this is where I like to really start people, right? And it's simply awareness first, like being aware. So that's like first practice. You don't just jump into this clinical this hyperventilation practice, right? So if someone was to want to kind of do this now, it's great where you would, kind of if you can be seated, sitting up straight. If you can lie down, even better. If someone happens to be driving right now, I don't recommend doing this because it's nice to close your eyes
Yes.
and just simply notice. Notice your breath. Like, how do you breathe?
Mhm.
Does your diaphragm expand? Do you feel it in your belly? Or do you only feel it at the top of your chest? Are your shoulders rising? Do you feel a little tension in your neck?
Mhm.
Noticing where you breathe and how you breathe is like step number one. And then if you want to practice something that will just make you feel better overall, less stressful, better, is just maybe do a 5-second inhale and a 5-second exhale, all through your nose.
Mhm.
Do it for a minute, do it for 2 minutes. And just same thing. And then start to notice, are you able to expand your diaphragm more? Are you able to release all of the carbon dioxide out of the body? Are you able to just kind of notice how it feels? And that's really a good place for people to simply start a breathwork practice.
Right.
Doesn't have to be anything more formal than that.
Right. I like that idea. And a lot of people just kind of restate this. Breathing correctly can help the body with a myriad of illnesses, including you guys weight loss, which is a major issue right now. There's so many different drugs hitting the market, and proper breathing can help your body to release that fat out of the
Mhm.
cells. Um, can you speak on that in any way, shape, or form of how is this actually happening? Is it all carbon dioxide? Is it getting trapped in our cells? What's going on?
I think that you made a really good point. And like I said, there was this missing piece with all of my clients. What was missing? Why is there so many challenges to get through? When someone has so much information, it makes it more and more challenging to lose weight. Like everything, right? We lose water in our body or calories, quote unquote. That's not necessarily the right word, but we're losing what we're able to burn, and ways that we do that is through our breathe, through the breath. Once again, but it needs to come out the nose, right? It's
Mhm.
the short. If we're just, it's that's really difficult. But when we're going ahead and when we're sweating, when we are same thing, sweating, going to the bathroom, and through poop, through breath, through urine, and through sweat. These are the ways that we're able to release some fat out of the body.
Right.
Um, and how breath work can completely impact that is I still believe it's because it will improve your pain, it improves your posture, it improves your ability to handle stress. And from an emotional eating standpoint, which everybody eats in some way, shape, or form emotionally.
Right.
Even the best of us. Okay. So it will help with that because instead of the automatic no thinking, go to X food, our body has started to slow down things a little bit with some breathing practices, or it's given us something else to do with our mind. And therefore, it can help with some of these emotional type of triggers. So I don't know where I was going. I kind of lost it there.
That's
Um,
okay. No
so
worries. No worries.
as you know, I do part of that is just me, my brain, and part of it is from the other little injury. But anyhow,
No worries with that. I know that breathing does help with increasing health span. And I think there is so much to the whole nose breathing. And there's so much talk on that with, taping the mouth closed that you're forced to breathe through the nose, especially at night, because so many people, they lay back there, breathing through the mouth. And so taping the mouth. Have you ever tried that or had clients who have done
yeah,
that?
I love mouth taping. But here's the thing. Okay, so it's not going to cure your dysfunctional breathing. And a lot of people think I tape my mouth and I'll be good. Uh, it does help tremendously. It will increase your tolerance for carbon dioxide. It will lower your heart rate. It will lower your respiratory rate. It will help with those things. What people say mouth taping, people are like, I'm not putting tape over my mouth. There's actually a specific tape that's still inexpensive. I mean, you can just put, I don't recommend it though. So the tapes are also, you're still able to actually open your mouth.
Okay.
People are like, what? And they kind of go around your mouth, or some will go like an X, but it's not like gluing your mouth shut,
You're
right?
right.
So to speak.
Like a
So
duck spot.
that's one thing that is helpful for people to know. Like if you are still able to, if you need to, literally open up your mouth, right? It it does freak people out because they think, oh my God, you're gonna choke me to death. But this is the thing. Give it one or two, okay, give it 2 to 3 nights. It can be a little uncomfortable, especially for those of you who are truly mouth breathers.
Uh-huh.
And it takes a little time. It takes a little time, but what you will see, and especially if you do wear a device like an Aura Ring, is you can see your respiratory rate getting better,
Yeah.
slower, which you may then notice you don't wake up in the morning. Obviously, if you've been waking up with a dry mouth, you will notice you don't have one.
Yeah.
If you've been waking up in the morning with a headache, you all of a sudden may not have headaches. And those are some of the obvious signs of mouth breathing when you wake up in the morning with a headache and you also wake up with this very dry mouth.
Right.
So I like it because it does help us then practice more during the day. It makes us it's another way of increasing our consciousness of
Mhm.
our breathing.
Right. That's a really good idea. And, if you're really, really scared, you guys, get some of the mouth tape like she's talking about and just put it on after dinner and watch TV with it and just see how it feels so that, you're a little bit more relaxed going into it because you don't want to go into the nighttime never having used it before and start hyperventilating 'cause you can't
Yeah,
breathe.
right. Exactly. I mean, that's truly the thing is like do that. Like when you're cleaning the dishes, like just
Yes.
it's actually even a little harder almost because
Mhm.
you're used to opening your mouth. Your heart rate's it's almost like you're doing a little tiny bit of exercise, not really. You're doing some movement, right? And so it's going to bring your awareness to how can I slow my breath down so I feel better when I'm cleaning the dishes? I mean, it's those little moments, like you say, right? To practice that first if you're nervous about doing it when you're
Yep.
sleeping.
Yeah, that's fascinating to me. We have people forget we have mitochondria all over our bodies. Why is that? Because they're inside of our cells. As we know from science, fast way back when they're the powerhouse of our cells, not just the brain cells or the heart cells. They're all over us, you guys. And mitochondria runs on energy, which it is mainly picking up from oxygen.
Yep.
And we need to be aware of that. So, okay, so we know it helps with weight loss, um, lung expansion. People who have any kind of like lung ailments where it's kind of gripping like this. I wrote some of them down. It's helping with our nervous system, our immune system. It can restore our health. It helps with your skin because again, you're breathing in that oxygen or that moisture along with the oxygen and the moisture are feeding your cells. So it's helping with the skin even. I mean, guys, come on. Um, where are some of the other things? Oh my
It's
gosh.
antibacterial. I mean, honestly,
Yeah,
it's antibacterial,
in a good
antifungal,
way.
anti in- um viral, all of those things helping with pollution, all of the things like I mentioned early,
Mhm.
because we have those little hairs in our nose. We have these little hairs in the top of the alveoli of our lungs. Those are our kind of first line of immune response.
It
And so, I mean, that's why and therefore impacting benefits to our mitochondria, to the
absolutely.
energy in our whole body.
Absolutely. And you guys, I am not giving medical advice here, but I remember a couple years ago when, the virus was really circulating around and we were all very, very careful with what we did. I remember this one day of coming home and feeling like a little bit of a scratchy throat. I'm like, uh-oh, I don't know what's going on here. And so I went and sat in the sunshine and I forced myself to do the rhythmic breathing. I did box breathing all of the way around, you guys, all four sides. And, it was a little bit challenging in the very beginning to get that full deep breath and holding it. You could feel a little bit of, which is okay. Those coughs actually help your lungs. Um, but by the end of that session, I only did it like 5 minutes. You guys, I did not get sick at all. I mean, even scratchiness, everything was gone. And you felt so much better. I mean, it's something that, people tend, if they start feeling a little ill, they tend to start holding their breath more because they're
Mhm.
afraid. And that's the very time we need to be really breathing and really working those lungs, working the nasal passages. Um, can you give us like a really good example? Maybe even walk us through how to breathe for the normal person who it's like, okay, I've got in and out. Um, just kind of giving an example of what we could be doing on a daily basis, just as a practice.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that you might find kind of interesting and relatable
Mhm.
is we have each day, you'll notice like you take your own size. Like throughout the day, many of us, most of us, take these random sighs, like, oh, right throughout the day. I'm sure you can think about the times that you've done that, right? Where you
Uh-huh.
take these random physiological sighs. Well, it's actually a very fascinating and powerful tool to have this physiological sigh. So if we were to practice that intentionally on our own, we take two inhales, like a comfortable full breath through our nostril. We pause at the top. We kind of take a second little inhale to top it all off.
Mhm.
And I will do this in a minute. And then I'll slowly out of the mouth, we taper it off and we completely pause and then do it over again. So you're doing your own physiological sigh, and therefore you can completely change kind of this stressful anxiety, this psychology in just a couple of minutes.
That's fascinating.
So if someone is scattered or anxious or stressed, instead of trying to like figure out what's going on in my mind, right? We can do these physiological sighs. Or if you ever catch yourself doing one of those sighs, like just at random, you're like, oh, maybe I should do a couple of those on my own. Um, so that's a really good, really interesting little practice. And it's a really fascinating way to kind of impact your physiology and your psychology really quickly.
Very cool, and you're gonna show us how to do this really fast, though.
We
The
can't,
2
only if you want to. So that's why I
I
said,
do want to, the 2 breaths, are we doing them both through our nose, like, breathe
yes.
and breathe?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
look at
I want,
us.
we're going to do that all together. I'll still cue you, even though I'm doing the brain with you at the same time.
Okay, you
So
guys, put your papers down, put your pencils down, sit up straight, and Debbie, tell us how to breathe.
yeah. So go ahead and just exhale on your own. And then when you take an inhale through your nose, you're going to top it off again at the top with another inhale. And you're going to exhale out your mouth just a little bit, really slowly. Let it get to the bottom. And you're going to inhale again. Top it off. Exhale through the mouth. Just do it one more time. So for me right now, I had a hard time getting that second one in. You could probably see that. I was a little too high, but I think part of it's just because I'm talking and I'm, doing, but
You're on
you
camera.
when you guys feel a little pissed off, let's say during the day, if you're at
Uh-huh,
work or something's just agitating you, do three of those. I
yeah,
mean, this is why we call it functional breath work. This is not right. Is there something you can do right now that will just help you feel better?
mhm.
And so that, and like I said earlier too, doing 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, do that a few times. These are the things that are going to help us during the day when we feel a little bit more stressed. But if there's something we need where we need to amp up some energy,
I was gonna
there,
ask about that. Say
yeah.
we're lifting
So
weights
there are
and
ways to
we're
do
about
that
to
as well.
lift oh, yeah, we're about to lift something a little bit heavier. We're about to go into the interval training on the treadmill. We need more energy fast. What
Yeah.
can we do with our breath?
Well, you can take an inhale for 4 seconds, hold it at the top for 4 seconds. So this is a triangle, and then release it for 4 seconds. So four in, hold for four, four out, or five, five, five.
Mhm.
That's gonna give you a little bit more energy, right? It's
Okay,
going to help with a little bit increase of energy through the day. That's one way to do it.
okay.
Um, and another thing to think about, speaking of exercise, so what I encourage people to do with exercise in particular, if you think about it, I'm just gonna say running. I don't run, but you're running and you're running at a speed where you can no longer you're not keeping your mouth closed. There's no way you can keep your mouth closed. That's kind of breathing, right? So, but there are ways you can improve your ability to tolerate carbon dioxide
Uh-huh.
and start to breathe more often with your mouth closed during exercise. So, if you were saying you're getting on a treadmill, might be boring, and you're walking a little bit of an incline, just notice that I guarantee you probably will have your mouth open. So start to close it. And then if it gets too difficult, like go ahead and take a breath or two after, say, 20 steps, and then try to just breathe through your nose again.
Mhm.
Another methodology is to walk, not hard, 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 or run lightly for 20 steps, then pause, right? Hold your breath if you can for another 10 steps, and then walk again, run again for 20 steps, hold for 10 steps. So it's a way of increasing your carbon dioxide tolerance and giving you some energy and decreasing stress. Like, how
Right.
do they all work together? But they do, you
Yeah.
know?
I know if I'm out on a challenging hike, tell me if I'm right or wrong. I could be very wrong. I don't know. Um, I like getting into rhythmic breathing. And I find that that helps me to, if I'm going a long distance or going up a hill where it's like two breaths in, two breaths out, two breaths in, two breaths out. Is that good, bad? Should I not be doing that?
Here's the thing, too. I love that you said, tell me if I'm wrong. There's really no right or wrong.
Okay.
But yes, there are ways to improve our carbon dioxide tolerance, which is going to help us with a multitude of health benefits.
Right.
And so that's a little bit of that hyperventilation process, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're doing that too, like another type of breathwork exercise is sort of this inhale quick for two, exhale quick for two or four. And then at the end of say 10 of those cycles, you pause and hold for 10 seconds, right?
Okay.
At the end of the exhale. So that's something that a lot of people do. It just might speed up your heart rate and increase a little bit more of your stress for that. So it's not right or wrong. It depends on what you're looking for.
Right.
But it may be very beneficial for increasing the carbon dioxide tolerance and helping you maybe be out there a little bit longer because you're saying to your body, I can do this stress. This is one of those hermetic stresses, right? In a
Uh-huh.
sense, like it's letting you know that if someone does get panic attacks, I know I've said that before, that sometimes is what happens is like, and if they practice like what you've practiced, they're telling themselves, oh, wait, I've done this before and I'm safe. I can do this. As a
Okay.
matter of fact, I've done it before and I was able to hike better or run faster or so there's your answer. Not right, not wrong, not good, not bad.
Yeah. One of the biggest things that I have taken from, all of my years of research, and this, goes back to the 90s with personal training when I was first getting into all of that, into having my wellness center and so on and so forth, is that, the brain only knows what we tell it.
Mm,
It doesn't have eyes to actually see what's going on. It is aware of our circumstances based on our breath, what our eyes are telling us, what the perception is, what we're feeding the brain. So if we're telling the brain, like you just said, I'm okay. And you can't just say, I'm okay, brain.
yeah,
It has to be it has to be like an all over thing. And I tell people this like when they're trying to do balance exercises. You need to breathe. You need to have your posture straight and you need to convince yourself, I am okay. And suddenly you're going to be able to balance. If you're thinking, oh, holy crap, I'm going to fall any second,
mhm,
you're probably going to fall. And that's just your brain trying to help you in a sense, even though it could be the very opposite of what you're actually wanting. So I love that you say that we have to work along with our brain. Again, you guys, our body is our tool, it's our partner in this whole game of life. We're working together with our body and using the brain, I mean, using the breath as a tool to
mhm,
help us in aging and helping us in illness and in health. Um, there are times of, trying to pick up that energy level and times of trying to bring it down so we can relax. I know digestion with your meals, it's one of those big times that you need to bring your body into rest and digest. You should not be having a meal and having an argument at the same time and trying to, eat. And it's not going to happen because during that argument, you're naturally going to be breathing a little bit faster. Your heart rate's going to be a little bit heavier. So how can you quickly bring it down, Debbie, and trying to help your body to digest properly and breathe properly? I mean, do you have any tips? On that one?
Well, it's funny that you there's 2 answers to that. So
Okay.
one, with my clients, we and probably a lot of nutritionists or people in the nutrition space will say the same thing. Before you eat, take some nice slow breaths, right? But I extend it a little further is you want to go ahead and just same thing. Can you spend 2 minutes slowly I've said this, inhale 4, exhale 4. Just and what that's going to do is it's going to help automatically enhance the need or the want to really enjoy your food. You've already slowed down from whatever's going on. And so now when you start to eat, which is a gut healing thing, we talk about breathing and then chewing your food. These are all pieces. And it's simply that just slow the breathing down in and out through your nose for 4 in, 4 out. So that's one answer. The other answer, the question was,
Preparing our body to digest, rest and digest.
yeah. So really, that's the main one for
Uh,
certain. Um, and I like to tell people to spend some time with it. Really spend some time with it.
yeah.
And so it seems like it's the same one, but there's a reason for it for calming that nervous system. And another one that is also helpful is kind of the opposite of what I told you to get energy is inhale 4, exhale 4, pause 4 at the bottom. That'll
Mhm.
kind of do the same thing, but it's going to be the other one. It's going to help you kind of just calm down a little bit and get your body ready to digest some food.
Right. Yeah. I find it just also interesting, you guys. And, I know I'm like really big into talking meditation, meditation, meditation. But part of that reason is so many people get scared of that word. They're like, oh, you're one of those people. And it is getting that woo stuff. And it's like, you guys, it's not woo. It's counting your breath for 4 and releasing it for 4. Guess what? You just meditated. It's not that hard. And, when we're getting ready to eat and we're trying to do that breathing, I find it's very meditating is focusing, like you said, on the food, on the chewing of the food. But you know what? Stop and see if you can like distinguish the flavors of what's in your mouth and not just, oh, it tastes like basil. Okay. What does basil taste like? Is it sweet? Is it sour? Is it bitter? What flavor is really in there? And if it's, something like guacamole or something has a lot of different flavors in it, can you differentiate the different flavors that's in there? And forcing your mind, because your mind is not going to stop, is not made to just completely stop, but forcing your mind onto something that's pleasant, that's interesting, you're now helping your breathing to slow down. And that is a form of meditation, you guys. It's not scary.
Well, when we slow down your breath there, when you slow down, when you chew more often, I'm sure you've mentioned this on many a podcast. Um, I think that's an interesting way to help people chew slower, to chew more bites, is to notice the flavors. I've never actually thought of that.
There you
Um,
go.
but
You're
I
welcome.
always encourage you to eat first, right? Breathe, chew 20 times.
Uh huh.
But I think if you add to that as you're chewing, do you notice the lemon? Do you notice garlic? Do you know what are some of the flavors you're noticing besides just chomping on the food and engulfing it into your body?
Yeah.
Um, I think it's a really cool way to do it is to see if you can notice flavors. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you guys are gonna laugh at this, but I live in Napa, and I think that really came about because you go to wine tastings, and it's like, can you taste
Yeah.
the smoke in the wine, and can you taste the chocolate? And it's not that they're putting chocolate in the wine, you guys, but it's the flavors and the nuances that are coming out. And I'm
Mhm.
like, if I can do that with wine, I should be able to do that with food. And you know what? It really, really works.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
it's amazing what that's actually doing to the body. And again, the brain wants to think. It was made to think. Our mind is powerful. And we just need to give it sometimes something to think about that's not an argument or a thriller movie or a football game.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. So, next football game, just imagine you've already won. And you're just sitting back like, "Oh, yeah, they got this."
Right.
And hopefully they won't win.
So, so yeah, I mean, I hope those little ideas were helpful. I really once again, it's something I've fallen so in love with. It's helped me through my healing process, and I am enjoying learning more and more every day and putting it into practice every day. I feel like the more I do it, I mean, it's going to take time. It's one of those practices that it's going to take time for me to improve upon it with my clients. It's going to take time for me to just learn how it's really affecting me better and differently, and therefore other people. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like anything, I mean, unless you are, traveling the world talking about breath work and doing, 20 different conferences a day and practice sessions a day, you don't live it. This is our life and we're learning. And I think almost it's kind of better because we're learning how to put breath with the normal everyday life.
well, and
And it's
that's the point.
harder.
Right. You don't have to go to a class and spend an hour once a week. You need to be able to use it, just like you said, within a minute or two,
Mhm.
maybe within 20 minutes is great at home for yourself. There's something I do every night. I practice resonance breathing just for my sleep, which is a 4-second inhale and a 6-second exhale. More or less,
Mhm.
maybe it's 4.2 and 6.5 or whatever, but more or less, those are the types of things that we can just do that we don't have to spend a lot of time doing. Because
Yeah.
if I have a client and I'm asking them to start doing resonance breathing and I want them to do it twice a day for 20 minutes, really, they're going to fail. Like this isn't going to happen. So you have to meet people where they're at.
Yeah.
I think with anything that you and I do, because if they can have small wins, they're gonna go a lot further, and they're gonna want bigger wins and bigger wins and bigger wins. So,
Right. So somebody just starting out, they've never done a breathing practice before in their lives. How would you suggest that they get started with this? Should they do it one time a day? Should they do it at nighttime or should they do it in the morning time or before eating or should they do it more than once? What do you recommend? I mean, I know timing wise is going to be up to the person, but like,
yeah, once again, it's kind of like, where's your time? And that's kind of the question. It's like if I say to someone, "Okay, we're gonna practice this 4-6, this resonance breathing, okay, and I want you to see if you can do 2 minutes twice a day. Is that feasible for you?" You know, okay, when are the 2 best times for you? When do you know you will get it done? So we have to start there, but usually I just it's most people are like, "Don't get out of bed, spend 2 minutes breathing. Get into bed at night, spend 2 minutes breathing." The biggest drawback to people will be like, well, the time situation, and I think you and I both had this conversation is, are you looking at your cell phone before you go to bed? You don't need to do and how many minutes do you think you've been doing that? So instead, just 2 minutes of breathing,
mhm.
and people will fight you on it. They'll fight themselves on it,
Uh-huh.
but but, you know, okay, I'll let you have 15 minutes on your phone, and then how about 5 minutes of breathing? I mean, you kinda play this game,
Yeah.
which is not necessarily, like, sounds good, but I think people don't want to give up some of these things that we attach to that have given us this dopamine hit. But once they start this little 2-minute practice twice a day, they're gonna just a little bit. Okay, so were you able to do that for 1 week? Yes. How about if we increase it to 5 minutes? Um, we know I would love to jump in and say, let's start with 30 minutes, but it depends on the situation. I mean, there are people who I have practice 30 minutes a day, and we make sure we find the time for them and we put it into their schedule. I
Right.
mean, we have to be that diligent sometimes with ourselves. Literally put it on your calendar.
Right. Absolutely. And, divide it up. I mean, like, one thing that I do at night, I do my whole get ready for bed, but then I take, a few moments and do some deep breathing exercises. And, it's just me focusing on my breath. And then after that, then I'll say, I'll get into my prayers. And then after that, I might stretch a minute and then I'll go into a total meditation stage. And sometimes if I'm feeling anxious or restless, that might be 30 seconds. Other times it might be 5 minutes, it might be 10 minutes. Sometimes I just lose track of time and you're really kind of feeling it out, but I divide it up. And so my body is still getting that whole entire time of relaxation. And even if I stretch afterwards, it's my body moving. I'm still in that breathing, And breaking it up sometimes helps us, I think, figure out of, oh, this isn't so long. This isn't like, oh my God, I have to sit here for 30 minutes. What am I gonna do? You know?
Right.
That's great. Debbie, how if somebody wants to get a hold of you and ask you more questions about this, I mean, you guys, you can like leave a message on the poster underneath this on Instagram. But I mean, how else can somebody get with you? Can they do classes with you? Can they work one on one with you? What is up with that? And how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah. I currently am just doing one-on-one. That works best for me at this time.
Hmm.
And it's something I love doing because it's usually pretty big changes. And um, I have a website. It's not currently really up to date, but it's a great way to find me. It's just debghealth.com.
Okay.
And Deb G Health is my Instagram handle, but someone can leave me messages there. Those are probably the two best places. That's not hard to find me.
Yeah.
And yeah, I am open to any questions and any thoughts. So yeah.
Excellent. Very cool. And you guys, Debbie doesn't know this yet. um,
Okay.
After this show airs, you guys know that I usually promote for like 2 weeks, and I am going to ask her if she will do a little mini phone video and send it over to me, just of her breathing. That
Yeah.
we can post a little like just a little tiny video.
I would love that because I think it's once again, it's kind of an important thing. And it's sometimes like I believe I start with the boring. And I say boring because people are like, I should not want to pay attention to my breath. But really, it's kind of the starting point. You have to just know how you breathe. And we do a little bit of that. We just do a little bit of awareness, a little bit of what Campbell Will, who's the instructor of my course, calls pausing instead of holding, right? We'll pause. So a little bit of pausing, a little bit of improving CO2 tolerance, and that'd be fun. You can do it like 5 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys, it's just like, eating broccoli. I mean, how many of us started out saying, "Oh, I want broccoli tonight?" You know, it's something that, you have to teach yourself to enjoy sometimes if you weren't brought up with eating broccoli, like I was not brought up on eating broccoli. Um, but once you start doing that and telling yourself you like it, then you suddenly have to start having broccoli regularly. And it's the very same thing with breathing. You tell yourself how important it is and you start practicing it and you see the results. Suddenly you can't live without it.
When you said it, I mean, if you're still with us, honestly, learning to breathe better will change your life positively, I believe, more than anything else.
I love
More than changing your diet, more than well, I won't say that, but
it.
really, really, really is key. If you've got some pain, if you've got some stress, it's key. It's good.
That's key. I like that. Debbie, thank you so much for being with us today. And you guys, again, all of her information will be on the show notes, as well as you can hit up the poster and ask any questions. And if she doesn't see it, I will like forward it over to her, but she will be tagged. So you will find her one way or the other. And she is a great inspiration. And you are my sister in health now. And
Yeah.
happy birthday to us both.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll see you guys later.
I hope that you gained valuable information today from the episode with nutritional therapist and therapeutic breathwork practitioner Debbie Gutierrez, who shared her harrowing journey through health challenges, including severe fatigue, pain, discovering a congenital heart defect, suffering an embolic stroke, and undergoing open heart surgery. I know that I personally loved how she highlights the critical role of breath control and proper breathing techniques and how they played a role in her recovery and overall wellness. Thank you again for listening to our show. Please consider giving us a like and, if possible, on your podcast, give us a thumbs up or rate us a 5 if you get us on Apple Podcasts. Anyhow, share it with your friends and your family because getting information like this out to the public is key for us as we help to discover that people at any age can pursue health and enjoy the adventures many, many years to come. Thank you, guys.